All right, happy 2017. Glad you're with us. Here's my advice for you as we kick off this new year. And I know it's very similar to the advice I gave you at the start of last year. You better put your seatbelt on and buckle up. None of what Donald Trump is going to do is going to be easy. He is still going to have the same enemies that he had all throughout 2016. It's going to probably even be tougher because as he tries to implement his agenda, which is about as aggressive an agenda, and by the way, America needs most of it desperately, of any president in our lifetime. I would even argue in ways, if on paper, more aggressive than what Ronald Reagan proposed. Because he's fundamentally talking about shifting, changing, altering government at its core. If he tries to do this, the very same media establishment that worked against him and colluded with the Hillary campaign, they will still be there fighting every day and accusing him of everything from hating women and poor children and wanting dirty air and water, and it's all coming. The campaign is not going to stop. The narrative against him is not going to stop. So if you think you can vote for a candidate, walk away and think your job is done, then you've got another thing coming, because then you're going to get the government you deserve. It's not going to be something that he can do on his own. This is going to be placed in the laps of you, the American people that went out and voted for him. Because when important moments come up, and there should be many of them, a lot in the first 100 days, then you better be ready to help call your congressman and your senator and let them know how you feel, or else the changes we've wanted that you fought for all last year will be for nothing. And in that sense, it won't be his fault. It'll be your fault. It'll be your representative's fault. He's got a weak Republican establishment. They're embarrassed by him. You've got to understand this. Very few of these Washington Republicans went out and fought for their own candidate. Paul Ryan is now the speaker again. It's going to start immediately with the people that he's choosing for his cabinet. It'll start with his first Supreme Court appointment. I'll get to the idea. I know a lot of you are worried. What if Obama tries the recess appointment between the 114th and 115th Congress? Will there be a minute where he might be able to recess appoint Merrick Garland? We'll get to that in a second. There's so much that's going to come up here. I mean, look at Trump, by the way, was pretty funny. He said about Gitmo, lock the door and throw away the key. Well, that's Obama in his waning days. Have you been watching? This has been the single biggest post-election power grab almost since Teddy Roosevelt that we have seen in American history. And that is Obama trying to put every single obstacle in Trump's way that he possibly can. But if Trump follows through and he tries to lower the corporate tax rates, that's going to be labeled tax cuts for the rich. You know, there's a story out there about Ford Motor Company, which I think is a pretty good story and one that should make us feel pretty good, that they decided that the $700 million they were going to spend on a plant in Mexico, they're now going to build that plant in Michigan, which desperately needs jobs. I know because I've been in Michigan. I've been in the Detroit area, and I've seen the devastation. They want to literally bulldoze entire neighborhoods that are empty. Home after home after home, street after street after street, block after block after block. They want to bulldoze all these empty homes, consolidate services, because they can't afford to light up the entire city where there's only one or two people living on certain blocks and garbage services and the likes. I mean, to rebuild one of America's great cities is not going to be done overnight. But if Trump tries to eliminate, here's what's possible. I mean, maybe I'll put it in a positive way so that if you buckle up and you're ready for this fight, you're going to be enthusiastic about what it is which you're fighting for. You know, in the first hours that Donald Trump is president, he's going to be rescinding as many executive orders that Barack Obama has used to govern because he doesn't respect the Constitution, and he decided to bypass Congress and separation of powers and co-equal branches of government. The good news about ruling by executive orders is they can be undone. And the first order of business, Donald Trump can probably wipe out in the first few hours 70 to 75% of the damage that Obama has inflicted on the economy and on this country, just with the stroke of a pen. And then if they move immediately to repeal Obamacare, well, that takes away another 10%. Now we're up to 85%. And the remaining 15%, it will almost be as if Obama was never there for 8 years. It could be that deep and that profound. Now the question is, well, what are you going to replace all of this with? The only thing we're definitely left with is the $10 trillion in Obama debt, the bad state of the economy, a foreign policy disaster all around the globe. You know, but for the killing of bin Laden, I can't think of a single foreign policy success. But if he wants to lower the corporate tax rate, I can guarantee you the narrative isn't going to be that jobs are going to be created for the 95 million Americans out of the labor force. The narrative is going to be is Donald Trump is for big business. If he removes the burdensome regulation for automakers and steel mills and whatever other industry, Carrier air conditioners, because it's costing them money, compliance money. It's costing them in terms of the products they're able to create. It's costing them in terms of research and development because of these ridiculous environmental standards. And if the environmentalists tell you he's poisoning the air and poisoning the water, well, that's going to be an obstacle. And then you have these weak-kneed, spineless Republicans that don't have any courage or vision. If you don't call their offices with a steady stream and flood of support, then, you know, he might have difficulty making these changes. You know, changing the tax code from 7 brackets to 3, lowering the corporate tax rate, allowing multinational corporations, the repatriation, one-time tax, 10%. Well, that's all money that can be spent on manufacturing centers and factories and creating jobs for Americans. The next big component of this is if he eliminates Obamacare, you know, the Democrats' line is, you break it, you own it. No, you already broke it. It's shattered. It's in tattered all over the place. And now we have to clean up your mess. That's what the narrative ought to be. But the narrative the Democrats will put out is Republicans want your grandmother to die. That's what you will hear. This is all very predictable. When he allows drilling and fracking and an expansion of coal mining and nuclear facilities, and he changes America's energy policies towards energy independence, which is good for national security. We're not dependent on countries that hate our guts anymore. And it'll create millions of high-paying, career-paying jobs. Well, then it's going to be the environmentalists screaming, we're going to poison the air, water, and kill the environment. When Trump goes forward, and already there's a story out today how he's already planning to build the wall. When he starts building the wall, then it's going to be that Donald Trump's racist, doesn't want Mexicans in the country. Well, he did say the wall will have a door in it somewhere, so people can come over, but we'll know who they are. And it'll keep Americans safe. We'll have less competition. Those Americans that are out of work, the 8, 9, 10 million illegal immigrants that have jobs may end up having to go home. That means more opportunities for Americans that are on food stamps, in poverty, and out of work. So every single one of these policies is going to require a fight on your part. You can't just vote and walk away. You can't. If you do, then you're going to get the same failed government that you've always had. And that's not going to work. But I can guarantee you, starting now, not even January 20th, starting now, the battle is beginning. And the Democrats are going to be flailing, and they're going to be screaming, and they're going to be hemming and hawing and yelling and ranting and raving. And they're going to act as though, you know, the sky is falling. And they're going to go to their predictable fear tactics that they use in every election cycle. And if we fall prey to those tactics, then items in the agenda are not going to get done. But if the same people that were enthusiastic, that showed up at Trump rallies before the election and went out and voted in record numbers, if they want jobs, if they want corporate investment, if they want energy independence, if they want health savings accounts, well, you know, wait till Donald Trump sends education back to the states. The NEA is going to go ballistic, and they'll spend millions and millions of dollars in rank and file money to protect their turf, because we're talking about a fundamental rooting out of the corruption which is America's educational system. All right, you keep the system the way it is, you're going to get the same miserable results. We'll spend more per capita than any other country in the world with the worst results. All right, that's what your choice is here. You probably have heard, I know it's got more play, more press than I imagine. I was in London yesterday. Let me tell you my schedule. So I ended my vacation a little bit early. I was in Florida, but I drove 2 hours to Miami. Got there at 7 o'clock for a 9 o'clock direct to Heathrow in London. And we had been working some time on a sit-down interview with Julian Assange. And we finally got, he had agreed to the interview, frankly, 2 weeks ago. And we just had to get permission. This guy has not had sunlight on his face outside in 4.5 years. The first thing I saw when I got there is I was shocked at the very tiny living space this man has and how little access he has to the outside world. We get into the issues of why he's there. He made a very passionate, strong defense, and there's a lot of questions that I have about the legitimacy of these things, but I'll let you decide when you watch the interview. We're going to run the full hour of it tonight. We literally had about an hour and 20 minutes worth of taping, so it's frustrating that I can't just let the whole thing run. I wish I had 2 hours tonight. But it's, to me, a fascinating interview. Now, a lot has happened since I've been gone as it relates to this narrative by the White House and by the Hillary campaign and by every Democrat that the Russians tried to influence the elections. But yet, nobody has presented any evidence that anything new has been discovered or is proven to be tied to the Russians influencing this election in any way. And what was actually somewhat funny and humorous is the Washington Post. They actually made the claim that the Russians hacked the U.S. electric grid. And they had to correct a story that originally said Russian hackers penetrated the U.S. electric grid by breaching a utility company in Vermont. Well, then they had to put out a retraction claiming that Russia, in fact, hacked the grid. Why did they run with the story so fast? Probably because they wanted to create legitimacy to the story that the Russians hacked and influenced the elections. Now, I asked Julian Assange, and we'll play some of the interview later in the program today. I asked him directly, did he ever meet Vladimir Putin? No. Did he ever talk to him? No. Did he ever talk to an associate, a friend, a surrogate of Vladimir Putin? No. Did he ever talk to Donald Trump? No. Did he ever talk to a Trump surrogate? No. I think I had read a report that Roger Stone had spoken to him. Did you ever speak to Roger Stone? No. So he said no to all of these questions. And then I said, okay, can you tell the American people that, in fact, the Russians had nothing to do with the information that you got from WikiLeaks as it relates to the DNC and John Podesta's emails? And his answer was unequivocal. No, no, no. And yet, you know, what's very fascinating about all of this is Congress has been wanting an investigation here into all of this. You know, we've got one top cybersecurity expert, John McAfee. Well, he was quoted as saying, according to Zero Hedge, he's the creator of America's first commercial anti-hacking software. He said flatly, I can guarantee you it was not the Russians. Other cyber experts we have had on the program have said the same thing. Now, the administration continues to stonewall Congress. Long before Christmas, Congress was saying, well, give us the proof. Give us the evidence. And the president, the administration, has been stonewalling Congress in their demands for evidence showing that this claim is true. And then they put out a 13-page memo that basically said nothing. And no proof was offered. So it's very, very dubious in every way. And it's, you know, there's no evidence that I have seen at all that would debunk what Julian Assange is telling me. And if you're asking me if I believe him, having sat and spoken with him and spent all the time with him, I'd say I believe him. But you can watch tonight yourself and make your own decision.